Imagine a cold, harsh winter descending upon a nation unprepared. Food supplies are dwindling, store shelves are emptying, and millions are left wondering where their next meal will come from. This isn't just speculation, this is a looming reality we must face. Across the country, critical shortages are set to disrupt lives, leaving communities vulnerable and desperate. How did it come to this? What can you do to prepare before it's too late? Stay tuned as we uncover the chilling truth behind the winter food crisis that could change everything. Time is running out. Are you ready for what's coming? 1. The shocking pasta crisis that rocked Italy. Imagine walking into your favorite grocery store, ready to grab your weekly essentials, only to discover that the price of your favorite pasta has skyrocketed. Now, multiply that scenario across an entire country. Welcome to Italy's recent pasta nightmare. Earlier this year, a crisis of epic proportions unfolded in the heart of one of the world's biggest pasta-loving nations. Prices of pasta, a staple in every Italian household, surged so dramatically that the government was forced to hold emergency crisis talks in May. Yes, you heard that right, entire discussions dedicated solely to pasta. What caused this turmoil? A perfect storm of skyrocketing ingredient costs, particularly wheat, a critical component of pasta. Add to that rising packaging and mind-numbing logistics expenses, and what do you get? It's an unsettling recipe for unaffordable food. Consumers, already battling inflation, were hit hard. Some regions, like Tuscany's Siena province, felt the brunt of it, with pasta prices spiking over 50%. Just imagine heading into the store and realizing that the same bag of spaghetti you bought a week ago now costs double. Now, you might be thinking, that's Italy, how does this affect me? Well, here's the unnerving truth. While Italy struggled under the weight of this crisis, ripples were felt across the globe. Even in the United States, where pasta isn't quite as central to the culture, prices still climbed. Federal Reserve data showcased the grim trend, with the average cost of spaghetti and macaroni in 2024 jumping to $1.47 per pound, compared to $1.21 just the year before. And if you think this is an isolated incident, think again. This terrifying ordeal served as a warning sign, a potential precursor to broader food shortages that could strike anywhere. Sure, wheat prices may have begun stabilizing recently, offering a glimmer of hope, but the fragile nature of global food systems suddenly feels all too real. What happens if another critical staple is hit? Will we be caught off guard as Italy was? The pasta crisis might feel distant, but its implications are alarming and universal. If a food item so ingrained in Italy's culture can be thrown into chaos, how secure do you think our own food systems are? Brace yourselves, this could just be the beginning. 2. The terrifying egg crisis sweeping the nation. Think about a breakfast without eggs. No sunny side up, no fluffy scrambled eggs, no French toast. For millions of people, that's starting to become an unsettling reality. Eggs, one of the most basic and accessible staples, have taken a horrifying hit. This is no ordinary supply chain issue, this is a crisis born from disaster. It all started with the pandemic, which already placed immense pressure on farmers due to skyrocketing labor costs and disrupted supply chains. But just when things seemed like they couldn't get worse, a devastating outbreak of avian flu swept across the country, leaving destruction in its wake. Over 49 million birds, yes, 49 million were either killed by the virus or culled to stop the disease from spreading. This catastrophic loss spanned across 46 states, crippling egg production and leaving farmers with nearly empty coops. Suddenly, the nation's egg supply was spiraling into chaos. With millions of hens gone, meeting demand became impossible. And when demand outstrips supply, you know what happens next: sky-high prices that hit consumers like a freight train. To put this into perspective, in California, where the egg shortage was felt particularly hard, prices have tripled since early 2023. Imagine going to your local store, seeing that carton of eggs, and realizing it costs 3 times what it did just months ago. That's not just inconvenient, it's frightening. But here's the scariest part: experts warn that this nightmare is far from over. The egg shortage and these jaw-dropping prices are expected to drag on well into 2025, leaving both consumers and farmers in a state of unease. Farmers are struggling to rebuild their flocks while also trying to dodge the next wave of disease outbreaks. Meanwhile, millions of Americans are left questioning how they'll afford this essential food item as inflation weighs heavier on wallets. The egg crisis isn't just about expensive breakfast, it's a flashing red light alerting us to broader food security issues. When something as simple as eggs, a staple in nearly every home, becomes a luxury, it forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. What happens next? What other food items could follow suit? This isn't just an egg shortage, it's a warning. A warning that reminds us how vulnerable our food systems truly are. How prepared are we for what might come next? You might not like the answer. 3. The looming vegetable oil nightmare. Picture this: walking into a grocery store and finding the shelves bare of cooking oils. No canola, no soybean oil, no sunflower oil, and the price of alternatives climbing to chilling heights. This isn't some distant possibility, it's the increasingly grim reality we face as we head into another year of food instability. A vegetable oil shortage is on the horizon, and the reasons behind it are as alarming as the implications. First, let's talk about Canada, the world's leading producer of canola oil. Typically, their crops are robust, supplying kitchens worldwide. But last year, their harvest was small, shockingly small. A bad yield meant a lot less canola oil hitting the market. Next, we go to South America, where soybean crops have taken a sharp hit. Droughts, relentless and unforgiving, have shriveled yields into insignificance. Without rain, soybean supplies plummet, and in turn, the oil derived from them becomes more of a rarity. And then there's Indonesia. It's the heavyweight of palm oil production, by far the globe's largest supplier. But in April 2023, a drastic government policy left the food industry in turmoil. Exports of palm oil were halted entirely, cutting off a critical supply chain overnight. And even now, exports remain crippled. Producers are required to keep 1 ton of oil in Indonesia for every 8 that leave the country. This has slashed palm oil shipments by a staggering 25%. Fewer shipments mean higher prices, and who gets hit the hardest? Consumers, whether you're in Southeast Asia or across the globe. If that weren't enough, consider the devastating backdrop of war. Russia and Ukraine, 2 nations responsible for 70% of the world's sunflower oil, remain locked in conflict. Fields of sunflowers that once stretched for miles have been reduced to ashes, and factories that pressed their seeds into oil now lie silent. The war has eviscerated supplies, sending ripple effects across the vegetable oil market. Together, these factors create a perfect storm, one where vegetable oils become precious commodities, accessible to fewer and fewer people. Prices will rise steeply, and the food industry, reliant on these oils, will pass those costs on. Cooking oils touch almost every single pantry item you can think of. They're unsung heroes of food production. This isn't just about frying or baking anymore. This is about the basic infrastructure of food, breaking at the seams. Are we prepared for what happens if these oils vanish from our shelves? Time is running out to adapt. 4. Butter crisis, a meltdown in the making. What if your holiday cookies, your creamy mashed potatoes, or even your daily morning toast with a generous smear of butter became a thing of the past? Brace yourselves, because the dairy industry is in trouble, and butter, one of its most beloved products, is at the heart of a spiraling crisis. It's not just an inconvenience, it's an impending disaster that will leave your fridge emptier and your wallet lighter. The cracks have been forming over time, but the final months of 2023 delivered a warning shot to every butter-loving household in America. The price surge across consumer goods, an average 9.1% hike according to the Consumer Price Index, was bad enough. But within the food sector, butter became one of the hardest-hit items, its price soaring by over 12%, making it one of the fastest-climbing commodities. And no, this problem isn't going away, it's getting worse. The reasons are as terrifying as the consequences. A crippling labor shortage has been wringing the dairy industry dry, literally. With fewer farm hands available, dairy farms have faced massive declines in milk production. Milk, of course, is the lifeblood of butter production, and this shortage has slashed the supply. Fewer workers, fewer cows, less milk. It all paints a dire picture for one of America's pantry staples. What's worse, the Wall Street Journal revealed that the U.S. butter supply is now at its lowest level since 2017. Factories can't churn out enough to meet demand, and store shelves are already reflecting this grim reality. If you've noticed butter prices creeping or leaping up every time you shop, you're not alone. The dwindling supply and climbing costs are starting to hit consumers nationwide, and as the cold months set in, when butter is in peak demand for baking and cooking comfort foods, the shortage couldn't come at a worse time. But here's the real danger: this isn't just about butter. It's about the fragility of our entire food system. If dairy farms can collapse under labor shortages and rising costs, what's next? How secure is our ability to produce the essential foods we take for granted? The butter crisis is a warning we ignore at our peril. Soon you might have to ask yourself, is that stick of butter worth its weight in gold? At this rate, it might be. And the real question is, what happens when even gold can't buy you a spot in the dairy aisle? Be prepared. This is just the beginning. 5. The dark side of chocolate, a bittersweet crisis. Imagine a world without chocolate. No candy bars, no hot cocoa on a winter evening, no chocolate chip cookies fresh out of the oven. It sounds like a bad dream, right? Well, brace yourselves, because that nightmare is creeping closer to reality. The chocolate industry is on the brink of a supply crisis, and the fallout could leave millions of chocoholics heartbroken and their wallets empty. Cocoa, the golden ingredient that gives chocolate its irresistible flavor, is becoming scarcer by the minute. This beloved treat isn't just a luxury for the elite, it's a dietary staple in every corner of the globe. But with demand skyrocketing and supply chains crumbling, the chocolate world is facing one of its harshest battles yet. According to Reuters, cocoa prices in New York have surged to the highest levels in almost 12 years. Think about that, minus 12 years. That kind of price hike doesn't happen for no reason. Why are we here? The answer is as chilling as it is complex. The cocoa market is reeling from its second consecutive supply deficit this year, a disaster that is shaking the entire industry. Farms aren't producing enough to meet demand, and stocks are running dangerously low. According to SP Global Commodity Insights, this supply gap has driven cocoa prices to a nail-biting $3,160 per metric ton, the highest since 2016. And it gets worse. These inflated prices have already started trickling down to your local supermarket. Data from Nielsen IQ reveals that chocolate prices have leapt 14% in the past year alone. Your favorite chocolate bar is now a luxury item, and it's only going to get worse. The implications of this are far-reaching. We're not just talking about snack time indulgence. Chocolate production is a massive industry, impacting economies and jobs in cocoa-producing regions worldwide. When cocoa supplies dry up, entire communities feel the weight of this crisis. Prices for chocolate, from artisanal creations to basic candy, could soon climb out of reach for everyday consumers. But here's the truly terrifying part: this is only a glimpse of what's to come. If current conditions persist, chocolate could become a rarity, reserved only for those who can afford its steep cost. A world without easily accessible chocolate. It's no longer a stretch, it's a looming reality. Stock up now, because tomorrow's chocolate might come at a price so high, only the wealthiest will be able to indulge. And for the rest of us, this bittersweet tale might end with nothing more than empty shelves and fading memories. Stay alert. The chocolate crisis is real, and it's closing in fast. 6. Flour shortages, the crumbling foundation. Flour, the backbone of our daily diet, the silent hero in bread, pizza, pancakes, and every baked good you cherish. What would life look like without it? Pretty grim. Yet we're facing a crisis so severe that flour, something most of us take for granted, could be the next to vanish from shelves or come with a jaw-dropping price tag. It's a situation that could shatter our food system as we know it. According to the Consumer Price Index, flour prices have already spiked by 8.5% compared to just last year. But the scary part? Experts predict that this shortage is not some temporary hiccup, it's a lingering storm that could stretch well into 2025. Imagine months, possibly years, where your favorite bread, cookies, and even basic staples become harder to find and much more expensive. This isn't just a bump in the road, it's a gaping sinkhole under our food supply. But what's causing this disturbing shortage? While some might want to pin it on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, the truth is closer to home and far more terrifying. The United States is enduring severe droughts, decimating the hard red winter and hard red spring wheat crops. Together, these make up 2 of the 3 main varieties of wheat grown in the southern and central states. According to the USDA's grim estimates, 75% of these crops are suffering under relentlessly dry conditions. For farmers, it's not just a bad season, it's devastation on an apocalyptic scale. Think about what a shortage of flour means. Bread, a staple food for virtually every American household, could skyrocket in price, or worse, become a luxury itself. Pizza, one of the nation's most beloved foods, might become a rare treat. Pancakes, cookies, cakes, all the little joys we bake at home could slip out of reach. And if you think substitutions will save us, think again. Flour is a non-negotiable ingredient in so many items that its absence might shift how we eat altogether. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a warning. Our food system is cracking, and flour, a simple, seemingly everlasting pantry item, is at the center of it. If the fields can't recover, if droughts persist, the very foundation of many of our diets could crumble. Can we weather this storm, or are we heading into a recipe for disaster? It's a question every household needs to face. The stakes have never been higher. Prepare now, because the flour shortage could very well upend everything we know about feeding our families. 7. The rice crisis, a silent catastrophe. Rice, an ancient staple that feeds billions, is now at the center of what could be one of the most devastating food shortages in modern history. You might not think much about rice when you see it stacked neatly on grocery store shelves, but what if I told you those bags could disappear? The events unfolding around the world are creating a perfect storm that could push rice, one of the most consumed grains on Earth, out of reach for millions and make it an unexpected luxury for many more. The signs are impossible to ignore. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has sent shockwaves through agriculture supply chains, but rice isn't just collateral damage, it's a direct hit. And while war wreaks havoc from one angle, extreme weather is pummeling rice fields from another. Think about it, key rice-producing powerhouses like China and Pakistan are battling relentless floods, droughts, and unpredictable conditions, pushing their production into crisis mode. These aren't isolated weather events either. Experts blame the resurgence of the El Niño phenomenon, a climatic nightmare that disrupts global weather patterns, leaving failed crops and food insecurity in its wake. If that wasn't bad enough, India, the top exporter of rice, dropped a bombshell in July. It will no longer export non-basmati white rice. This move is a desperate attempt to protect its own dwindling resources, but for the rest of the world, it has triggered a domino effect. With less Indian rice on the market, countries scrambling for supplies have driven prices to staggering levels. Even with a slight dip in recent weeks, rice prices remain at decade-high levels, averaging about $16 per hundredweight. Fitch Solutions commodities analyst Charles Hart warns that we're not out of the woods yet. Industry experts predict these prices will weigh heavily on global markets for months, possibly into the new year. But this is more than just an economic headache, it's a humanitarian disaster. For millions across Asia, Africa, and beyond, rice isn't just a side dish, it's survival. It's the foundation of their daily diets. If supplies don't stabilize, the consequences will ripple across the globe: soaring hunger rates, economic upheaval, and social unrest. Here's the chilling reality: this isn't just about rice. It's about the fragility of our global food systems. When something as fundamental as rice is teetering on the edge, what's next? How deep does this crisis go? Stockpile what you can, because the rice shortage could signal the unraveling of a much bigger food security nightmare. The clock is ticking. 8. The beef breakdown, a carnivore's nightmare unfolding. Beef, the crown jewel of any barbecue, the irresistible steak on our dinner plates. But what if I told you the beef supply chain is cracking, and prices are set to remain stubbornly high? It's not just an inconvenience, it's a warning sign that we all should heed. The meat aisle might be the next battleground in this food shortage crisis, and the shockwaves will hit every dinner table across the country. The numbers paint a grim picture. According to USDA projections, beef production in the second half of 2025 is forecast to drop by 180 million pounds. That's less steak, less ground beef, and fewer of the cuts we crave. But don't start counting on any budget-friendly deals just yet. Despite an economic slowdown that's cooling demand for premium cuts like filet mignon and ribeye, prices across the board are holding strong and expensive. Why? Deep-rooted issues in the beef industry are creating a perfect storm, and it's about to get worse. For years, market experts have quietly watched the warning signs of this crisis. David Anderson, an agricultural economics professor at Texas A&M University, says this contraction in beef supplies has been building steam for quite some time. Now we're seeing the fallout. One major factor? Drought. Not just a bad season here and there, but long, devastating droughts that are wreaking havoc on cattle farmers across the U.S. Crops have withered, water supplies are scarce, and farmers have been forced to sell their herds faster than anticipated, leaving fewer cattle in the market. The consequences are catastrophic. Fewer cows mean fewer calves. Fewer calves mean, and here's the kicker, reduced breeding for future generations of livestock. This is not an issue that resolves itself in weeks or months. The effects of this breeding shortfall could stretch into 2025 and beyond. For us, this means more expensive hamburgers, pricier steaks, and the terrifying possibility that beef might eventually skyrocket beyond the reach of many ordinary families. But it's not just about price tags, it's about what it represents. When the beef industry is this fragile, its collapse sends ripples across agriculture, food chains, and economies. This is no longer about a single food item. It's about the vulnerability of the systems we rely on, now glaringly exposed. Can we truly afford to lose beef, Or is this the dawn of a new, harsher reality at our dinner tables? Buckle up, because the beef crisis is more than expensive, it's the tip of the iceberg. 9 almonds, the billion-dollar crop hanging by a thread. Almonds, a snack beloved for its crunch and packed with nutrients. But what if I told you this pantry staple is facing a crisis unlike any other? Picture this: a world where almonds vanish from store shelves, where their once affordable price tag turns into a luxury. It's not just a possibility anymore, it's a reality creeping closer, fueled by a terrifying chain reaction in our agricultural system. At the root of this crisis are some unlikely heroes facing extinction: bees. That's right, the buzzing little workers that are the backbone of almond production are under siege. Bees don't just pollinate flowers for fun, they perform an indispensable role in California's almond industry, which produces 80% of the world's almonds. Without them, this multi-billion-dollar industry crumbles. The Almond Board of California has made it clear: no bees, no almonds. Now, think about this. Severe weather conditions have battered the U.S., with freezing temperatures, relentless winds, and punishing rainfall directly disrupting the bee's life cycle. The pollination process that should be humming along during almond season is now in chaos. For the farmers, it's not just a bad harvest, it's an existential crisis. Most of these farmers rely heavily on honeybee pollination services, which California happens to dominate. But with the disruptions we're witnessing, even the buzz of survival is fading. It's not just almonds that are in trouble. When the almond season ends, those same bees are transported to pollinate over 90 other crops: key fruits, vegetables, and even honey production. If the pollinator system collapses, we're talking about a food crisis that's much larger than almonds. This is just the beginning of a larger catastrophe, a ripple effect that could devastate global agriculture. And then there's the cost: almond lovers are already feeling the sting. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, almond prices shot up by a staggering 33% in a single month. That kind of price jump hasn't been seen since 2014, and it's not showing signs of slowing. If something doesn't change, and soon almonds might become as rare as gold. This isn't a small inconvenience, it's a disaster in the making. The stakes aren't just high, they're sky high. What's coming isn't just about almonds, it's a warning bell for the future of global agriculture. The bees are dying, the crops are failing, and our food system is inching closer to a breaking point. Will we act in time, or is this the first step toward a food chain collapse? 10 salmon, the vanishing king of the seas. The saying, "There are plenty of fish in the sea," a comforting phrase of abundance, no longer feels true. Take one look at salmon, and it's clear that this iconic powerhouse of nutrition is slipping away. Once a staple on dinner plates and restaurant menus, salmon is now at the heart of an ecological crisis that could leave our oceans emptier than we've imagined. Among the hardest-hit species is the legendary Chinook salmon, also known as king salmon. These giants of the sea, prized for their size, flavor, and health benefits, are now cascading toward disaster. California, a stronghold for Chinook salmon, is seeing numbers plummet at an alarming rate. This year, the forecast for 3-year-old fall-run Chinook returning to the Sacramento River to spawn is less than 170,000. To put that in perspective, it's one of the lowest counts in over 15 years. But it's not just California. Alaska, renowned for its abundant salmon fisheries, is experiencing equally chilling declines. Across North America, these majestic fish are vanishing, and the causes are as disturbing as the trend itself. Climate change is rewriting the rules of their habitat, raising water temperatures beyond what salmon can tolerate. Droughts in California are depleting the rivers they need to spawn. Pollution poisons their ecosystems. Overfishing strips oceans of both salmon and their natural balance. And disease spreads like wildfire among stressed populations already pushed to the brink. The situation is so dire that California has taken an unprecedented step. It has banned all commercial and recreational salmon fishing for the entire 2025 season. For the first time in 15 years, fishermen are casting empty nets, not to save themselves, but to save what little remains of the salmon population. Make no mistake, this isn't just about a down year in fishing, it's a desperate attempt to halt a complete collapse. If salmon vanish from our oceans, what happens next? We aren't just losing a dinner favorite, we're losing a key species in the marine food chain. The rivers and oceans they once thrived in will face amplified chaos, as their absence ripples through surrounding wildlife. For consumers, the cost of salmon, already high, will continue to climb, turning this once common fish into a luxury item few can afford. The salmon shortage isn't a warning, it's a siren blaring in the dark. Empty oceans, barren ecosystems, and inflated prices are just the beginning of this chilling tale. If we don't act fast, the king of fish may fall for good, leaving an unfillable void in our seas and on our plates. The clock is ticking. The warning signs are undeniable. Our food system is under immense strain, and winter food shortages are no longer a distant possibility, but a looming threat. From the fragile interdependence of bees and almonds to the alarming collapse of salmon populations, these crises underscore the vulnerabilities in our agricultural and ecological systems. The ripple effects extend far beyond individual crops or species, threatening the stability of our global food chain. But this is not the time for complacency, it's a call to action. Boosting pollinator protections, reducing overfishing, addressing climate impacts, and preparing for supply chain disruptions are steps we must take urgently. For individuals, now is the time to get prepared. Whether it's planning sustainable food storage, exploring alternative protein sources, or supporting local, resilient food systems. The challenges ahead are formidable, but with awareness and decisive action, we can work to safeguard our food security and create a more resilient future for the generations to come. The time to act is now.